Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we are doing a set review of V Extra Booster 10, the Mysterious Fortune, and specifically for Great Nature, and after that we'll do the other clans. Normally I don't do set reviews, but this time I do think I have quite some thoughts on the Great Nature support, and so I figured it'd be fun. Now before we get into that, I do want to say, on Claret Cards, if you want Great Nature stuff, we have the newest Mysterious Fortune stuff for pre-order, specifically focused on Europe, of course. If you're American, the shipping's going to be a bit high, your market tends to be lower anyway, so it's not always worth it. But yeah, we have all these fancy schmancy cards for pre-order right now. Apart from that, we also have Black Friday going on, so you can use the code Black Friday for extra percentages off, as well as higher discounts on other high rarity stuff on here. Can be worth it for you. Check it out, claretcardscom. A link is in the description. Without further ado, we have the Mysterious Fortune cards. First of all, we should look at this VR. We have Isabelle. We all know by now what she does, I assume. You can also read, so you can pause the video if you want to read the skill. In Standard, she basically makes all of our lottery cards more consistent. You have access to your skills at all times, both of them. So a Binoculus Tiger gets all of its value. Martina, which is not the best card in the set, unless, of course, we're talking about some other stuff. We'll get to that. You get all of this value, basically. And then on VNR, she also has the skill of getting 15,000 and you mill and add to hand. So it's like a draw, essentially. I can see this scaling very well into the future because we assume we're sticking with the lottery skill. This means that every future card should be working with this. And unless they just power creep this card by making another Isabelle skill on all the future VRs, I can see this card sticking in the clan for like quite a while, if that makes any sense. And for now, it's also, I feel, the best ride target. Now, if you're going first, you may still want to be riding Leopold, because going first, this card doesn't do much. The best part about going first as Great Nature is that your opponent isn't going first, but going second, this just adds so much value. However, if you're able to, I would still ride the Leopold going first. He will usually at least push with like the double crit 27k, or he will give you some sort of a field, which is something Isabelle won't be doing. Now, if you want to get Leopold, that's Answer of Truth. So if you're a Great Nature fan, that's probably something you want to be picking up pretty quickly, because I can see that going up if there's enough Great Nature fans at least. Now, overall, this card will be the key to turning everything on in Standard. And then in Premium, you want this as well in certain matchups. So for example, Leopold will always be a 66%-ish chance to add 2 cards to field. And if it's a second ride, 4 cards to field. Well, actually, you have 2 chances to do a 66% chance of adding to field. Jesus Christ. Anyway, sometimes it will do nothing, and sometimes it will give you cards to field. However, Isabelle, when going second, at least when riding up second, will always give you a card to hand. And so you have to consider, do I want that card to hand maybe over the potential cards to field? That may be a meta call. Apart from that, she will also work with the grade 3 Mary Martin. We'll get to that later. So I definitely feel like this card is being overlooked a bit in Premium, especially because we kind of hoped she was an auto on place for Premium, and then for Standard it's actually better that it's a continuous. For now though, I really think she's good. Let's put a number on it. I think in Standard she's an 8. And in Premium, she's an 8 as well, in a weird way. Maybe a 7.5, because she's like not a definite include into the deck in Premium, whereas in Standard she is. Yeah, I think that's a fair number. We'll get to some more cards now. We have Mathilde right here. So when placed, you mill 1. If it's a normal unit, your opponent is forced to guard with 2 cards. And if it's a trigger unit, she gets a critical. So if you get both, it's guard with 2 cards or take 2 damage to the face. Now, she doesn't gain any power. So the only way to get her big, well, big enough, is either to be on an Excel circle or to get a front trigger or a critical trigger or something like that. So her not reliably going up in power is, I think, the biggest thing holding her back, apart from also being a counterblast. And we'll see that in the rest of the set. Great Nature has quite some resource issues. Like, a lot of their skills cost either a counterblast or a soul blast or both, and that is really gonna hurt in the long run. You're really using a lot of resources. So sometimes you'll notice that, hey, I don't even have the CB for this card. In my testing, I've noticed I really wanted this card at like 3 and not 4, which was a big surprise to me, because usually triple Rs are like automatic 4-offs, and for me it was like, 3 is enough, feels like. But we'll see how other people's testing goes and results and so forth as they come in. So then we have the next card. We have Silh. Where is our boy Silh? Right here. So this card is basically also on V, and the last one was also on V. That's pretty important to note, because you could randomly get a crit on grade 2 or force your opponent to guard with 2 cards. That's pretty scary. However, here he costs a soul, so again, we're working with a bigger cost. But once you're into Isabelle territory, where all of your skills go off, he also soul charges. So you are being refunded your cost. However, you're still going through your deck pretty fast. So then you have to start balancing like, hey, sure, I'm getting my resource cost back, but I'm gonna deck out soon. It's pretty tough to balance the resources in this deck. You notice he gets the power, so he'll be 13k. Also when you just ride him, which is pretty cool. You don't need to boost him. Or if you mill the trigger unit, it will be draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. So this way, you're kind of ensuring that you go through the deck faster, which again, deck out is something to be scared of, but you're also making your hand better. You can get rid of some triggers you didn't want and get some pieces you were actually looking for. So in Standard, I definitely think we can run this, but I've noticed some people start already cutting him because, again, going through the deck a bit too fast maybe. I noticed on stream, I was still making quite some mistakes when playing this card. I also noticed he really made me deck out very fast. So I don't know if I would be running him. You also have the other Hamsuke card, which we'll be getting to, which still filters through the deck and more reliably faster and doesn't really deck you out. So maybe there's some argument to be made there to run that over this card. Still, this filters so hard. If you can find a build that can actually destroy people quickly, you don't really care about the deck out. Premium, I wouldn't run this, honestly, unless you're maybe running like Almirage with Isabelle and you call this off Almirage so that in your opponent's turn, Isabelle will still be live. And then you still get your draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Maybe you want to filter. It's like being able to Spangled without having to Spangled on Almirage. That's an option. I definitely think, like, if I had to give it a number, I would call this a 7 in Standard and a 6 in Premium. Something like maybe even a 5 in Premium, honestly. Like the only point where I can see him being used is the Almirage combo with Isabelle. Next card, we have Mary Martin. Now, this card in Standard doesn't do much. It is basically when placed, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, top card of your deck, so you do your typical mill, and then if it's a normal unit, your opponent cannot intercept. Like, okay, that's not a huge skill, it's fun. Trigger unit, retire all of your opponent's rear guards in the same column as this unit. That sounds cool, and it is pretty cool, but it being counterblast and soul blast in a deck that uses a lot of resources already, it's not really a card I want to be running in Standard, honestly. It's also a grade 3, meaning you're taking those valuable slots from like your Isabelle, from your Leopold. I don't see us running this in Standard, honestly. However, in Premium, this card is nuts because if Isabelle is your main ride target, so you ride Isabelle, both of these effects will definitely trigger. So what you can do is, in your opponent's turn, you can G-guard into Almirage, call this card, and then retire a column from your opponent in his turn during his attacks. So you can completely disrupt turns. You're essentially getting a denial griffin in Great Nature. So that's why in Standard, I will rate this card a 4 out of 10, but in Premium, I will rate it an 8 out of 10. You can make a control-based build with Isabelle and this card and just have a Denial Griffin. Now, the question, of course, will be, do you want that over the Leopold aggro? Maybe, we'll see. But it's still a really, really strong interaction that we should be looking at. Next up, we have Hamsuke's Rival Rocket Pencil Hamden. So, auto on VNR, once per turn when your unit is placed on an additional rear guard, counterblast 1, put a card from your hand into soul. That and this unit get power plus 10,000. If you have 2 or more additional rear guard circles, draw a card. Now, it's called Hamsuke's Rival, but it doesn't really do much for Hamsuke specifically. Now, it gets better with Hamsuke, sure, because you have 2 or more additional rear guard circles, usually, and then you draw a card, but the put a card from your hand into soul feels like it was made to make your ride chain more consistent, going 1, 2, 3, but it's a grade 3. So you don't actually put anything into your soul in time. So if you have to ride grade 3, not hit a chain, then use Hamden to put the grade 2 into soul too late, to then rewrite the grade 3 Hamsuke next turn, that's just so slow. It's still better than nothing, obviously, but it's not, like, it's called Hamsuke, but it's not really supporting Hamsuke. I more see this card like a discount Hyaki, where it gives 10,000 to itself and another unit, so you're really beefing some stuff up, and then as a bonus, you may sometimes also draw a card. Now, of course, you also minused your hand, but you went into soul. So you're actually gaining a soul of this card. I can definitely see this being in Standard a one-off in even non-Hamsuke decks, just so you can call something else to your Excel circle, and then this to a regular circle, and you suddenly have cards hitting really good numbers just for no reason whatsoever. And if you're a bit later into the game, with your 2 Excel circles, boom, you also get to draw a card. Now, obviously, the more of this you run, the more likely it is that you have to write this as a dead ride. We definitely can't be running too many. In Standard, I think I will be giving this a 7, and then in Premium, that is where this card actually shines. Because you can use Almirage, again, this G-Guard is so insane, to call something during your opponent's turn. So you call something to your Excel circle while this card is on your Vanguard circle. And now, this card becomes a 22,000 Vanguard without hitting any defensive triggers. You just go boom, 22,000. Just like that. That is really strong. Back in G, we had the interaction of Nitros and Mick, ruining people's days. And now we have essentially the same thing. A free defensive trigger just like that. This can really ruin some people's days. So again, we now have the Mary Martin Isabelle combo with Almirage, which is like a defensive combo where you are denial griffining essentially. And you have this Sookie Rival combo with Almirage where you are basically doing a Negro Lily Mick combo, making yourself 22k base in your opponent's turn. So in Premium, I rate this card an 8. For that reason, for having access to that. Now, of course, we'll have to see, do we prefer the Leopold aggro? Do we prefer the Isabelle with the Mary Martin? Or do we prefer this? There's going to be a lot of possible right targets in Premium just because of this set. Like, a lot of stuff in this set, I feel like, what format did you really design this for? So we'll see right there. This is a pretty cool card. Now, next up, we have a grade 2. Hamsuke's Rival Red and Blue Pencil Hamhiko. Once again, we have a Hamsuke that doesn't really support Hamsuke. It is a really good card, however. It says auto on VNR when placed, cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. So again, big cost resource-wise. Look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, put a card from them into your hand, and put a card from them into your drop zone. So you have like a rectangle Magus-esque skill, where you get to scry top 2, add 1 to hand, for a CB and an SB, which is good. It's a free plus. Well, not free, but like it's a plus that doesn't require you to discard, making it not a plus. So that's really, really good, especially because it also works on Vanguard. And then it also has a skill that it can gain 5k when something is milled, but once per turn. This in Standard feels very strong. We have another clan which does the same thing, but slightly worse, which is Nubatama, with Magatsu Gale. Obviously, Magatsu Gale can also bounce stuff, so it's better in other areas. But we've noticed that Magatsu rectangle-esque skills are very valuable. So Great Nature suddenly getting that in the form of a double R, so very budget friendly, is really nice. I can see this card being very good because again, we are filtering. It becomes a 14k just of its own skill, which is again very good. But again, we do have some resource issues. So in Standard, I will rate this card an 8. It's not free, but it's very free, if that makes any sense. And in Premium, here we have an issue. So in Premium, your right target is often Compass Lion because you want to be able to trigger Mikesaburo, or your right target is Artistic Ocelot to trigger Mikesaburo, or your right target is Bicolor Baku or Binoculus Tiger, all to trigger those Mikesaburos and Dugbills. This card is a very good early game card. I really want to run it. But we already have a right target, and we also have Crayon Tiger already. So are we able to fit this is the bigger question. I'm actually convinced we want to run it. I just am not convinced we can fit it anywhere. So we may have to rethink how we built the whole deck now. I definitely want to run it though. So I'm inclined to give it an 8. I just don't know where to put it yet. Really good card. Again, it's not really supporting Hamsuke in any way though. I would like to see Hamsuke support that's actually making the 1, 2, 3 instant Hamsuke double thing way more consistent, because that's my only gripe with the whole chain. But so far, none of the cards really do that. They always come 1 turn late. However, you are still gaining consistency in the sense that you may just find your grade 3 ride if you already have the 1, 2. So it's definitely helping, but it's not actively supporting, which is good, you know. Like generic support is always better than specific support. Well, always is a big word, but you know what I mean. It's much nicer to not be tied to archetypes too much. Next up, we have Culture Gorilla. Now, Culture Gorilla on VNR at the end of the battle that your Vanguard attacked costs Soul Blast 5, stand all of your power 25 or greater rear guards. If 2 or more were stand, retire all of your opponent's rear guards. So that's a very strong skill, but it's a lot of ifs. First of all, Soul Blast 5. Look at Standard. How are you ever reaching Soul Blast 5? When everything in your deck asks for soul. And even if it didn't, how will you reach it? You need to have your 0, your 1, your 2. Okay, that's 3 cards. Then you would have to maybe use the Hamdon Hamsuke. That's 4. and then you would have to rewrite. That's 5. And none of your skills are allowed to use soul. That's a big if. However, it is a very strong skill, but then again, you stand all of your power 25,000 rear guards. How reliably are you really hitting rear guards that create 25? Geograph Giant on an Excel 1 circle? I don't know about that. Hamden does make good numbers. Hamden may be the key to being able to use this card reliably. But again, all of your Soul Blast stuff would have to be cut, apart from Silh, which refunds itself. Now, if you are able to do that though, you retire all of your opponent's rear guards. So this is, you're basically trying to get a worse version of Hyuga, but the costs and the threshold to reach it is so much higher. So in Standard, I would rate this card a 3, purely because it feels very far-fetched right now to be able to do it. Now, if we one day get insane amounts of soul charge and insane amounts of being able to get that power, I can rate it higher. Now, in Premium though, this card is much easier to reach. Why? Well, first of all, you have Label Pangolin, a grade 1 that just gives you free soul for days. You target something, and then when that target attacks, you soul charge. Now you may be thinking, okay, that target attacks once. No, you have your Crayon Tigers and your Big Bellies to make that target attack multiple times in a turn. You also have your Premium Collection crits, which go to soul for free. If you're really set on using Culture Gorilla, you could use other stuff that soul charges, like maybe the soul charge heals, or maybe Castagna Donkey, even the draw trigger. So reaching the soul in Premium, while still relatively hard, is way easier than in Standard. Getting everything above 25,000, or well, as much as possible, again, is almost free because of Balaral. So Balaral does cost a soul, you want to watch out a little, but still, once you have the 6 soul to do Balaral plus this, you have an entire field of things that are gigantic, which will all attack twice, and you retire everything on your opponent's board. So in Premium, I want to rate this like an 8. I'm giving way too many 8s. I think maybe some cards should have been 9s, but I rate this high, much higher than in Standard at least, because in Premium, we actually have quite some things already that can make this card work, whereas in Standard, I feel like we're not quite there yet, unless of course you make a build completely made to do just this one thing. But then again, you would have to be running multiples of this, which doesn't create Excel circles, and it's again a grade 3 that you can miswrite, whereas in Premium, you have Mike Saburo, which can surge this card out for free. So you can run 1 or maybe 2, but at least Mike can also choose and find your correct grade 3 targets, so you won't be miswriting this quite as often. This definitely feels like very good in Premium, a bit far-fetched in Standard for now. Next we have Observation Scribers Sunny Quill. Auto on R, when your Vanguard attacks, if your card was put from your deck into your drop zone this turn, cost Counterblast 1 and stand this unit. So again, it's a Counterblast, pretty expensive, especially because the only way this will hit is either by boosting it with the Hamden, which is again a Counterblast, and again, you can't be running too many, or by putting it on an Excel circle. But then it's like a 14k swing that doesn't feel that insane. So in Standard, once again, I would rate this relatively low. I think it's more like a 4. Maybe people run it as like a 1 or a 2 off, just as that extra little attack push, but I really don't think we have the resources. However, once again, we have a premium interaction here. This card can be your target for Zoa, so it becomes 99,999, and when it hits, you automatically win. And since this doesn't target itself, it can restand even under Zoa's power. So you swing for 9999, boosted by Monoculus Tiger, which mills, turning live the whole thing. And then when Zoa attacks, you can stand this again and attack again. Now, if Mono hit a normal unit, your opponent can't use PGs on that first attack. And if it is a trigger unit, well, then they can PG it. However, you now have 2 swings of 99999 that automatically win you the game if they hit. And you can also use Crayon Tiger to restand the Monoculus Tiger to have 2 chances of turning off PGs. Now, is this better than the Rhino Monoculus cheese? I don't really know. I'm not entirely convinced, but it is an extra interaction that you have to be afraid of. And if you're playing against a deck that can cheat out a PG via a G guard, I feel you'd rather have the 2 chances to out that, rather than just dying by trying the Rhino. So I can see this being really good against maybe a Grand Blue, or maybe a Ezel who uses Salami on this. I can definitely see its use, whereas in Standard it's like, maybe not really. So I will give this boy, this very good boy or girl, whatever, a 7 because it's not quite as good as some of the cards like we've seen, like Isabelle, Mary Martin, or Hamsuke, the cheese with Almirage, but it's still a good interaction I can see happening in premium. Next up, we have Scale Toucan, the grade 1. Auto and R when placed, Soul Blast 1 and return one of your other rearguards to your hand. And then again, the same skill where if something is put from deck into drop, plus 5k. Now, when I first saw this card, I was like, oh, there's some cool things you can do, but it feels a little far-fetched. It can't be that good. And then I tested it. It's actually really good. So when your Leopold finds heals or draw PGs, you don't want to call them to field because you would be losing them, you wouldn't be having them in deck anymore. But Scale Toucan can then bounce them from field to hand. So in Standard, you will sometimes get a free PG out of nowhere. And in Premium, we used to go Chaser when our Leopold would find a heal to then add a heal to hand, which is like a worse stride. Now you don't have to anymore. Now your Toucan will automatically give it to you. And your Toucan can also target Mike Saburo and Duckbill, so you can use them on the same target multiple times. So you can call, let's say you rode a Compass Lion, which will retire something at the end of the turn. You call any grade 0 or just a garbage card. You call a Mike Saburo or a Duckbill, use a skill on that card that will be dying at the end of the turn anyway. You call a Toucan, bouncing your Mike or Duckbill, calling them again, putting the skill again on that thing that's dying, and now you get that skill twice. So that feels a bit far-fetched, but it's actually pretty good. And again, in Standard, it's another way to get to plus 5k, to get like a big booster. 13k is a really good number, because if you're boosting a 9k, like the grade 2, for example, you suddenly hit 22, which is magic on all the Excel and Protect decks. And apart from that, you are able to bounce Leopold things. Now, there's also some good on places in the deck that you may want to be able to recoup. Let's say the grade 2 again, it's an on-place counterblast. What if you used it last turn and you want to use it again? Toucan can then get it back to you. So in Standard, I'm going to give this an 8 because it's very useful, very versatile. I can see this being ran, maybe as a 2 off, maybe more even. In Premium, I'm going to give it a 9 because it's actually, I'm actually surprised by how good this card is in Premium. Will I run it at max numbers? Unlikely, unless you're making a deck purely designed to do just that, sure. But is it a really powerful tech? Absolutely. So definitely one of the few cards I'm willing to give a 9. Nothing in this set I will be giving a 10, I think. No, nothing in this set is getting a 10. But yeah, this boy is getting a 9. He's a good boy. Next up, we have the PG. I won't be covering that. Every clan gets that, you know, when road, draw, whatever. Then we have Dry Cell Rabbit. So when your card is put from your deck into the drop zone, if this unit is on additional R, cost, discard a card from your hand, and this unit gets power plus 15k. So this little cutie gets huge. But do you want to minus yourself for that? And is getting huge good enough? I kind of doubt it. I could see this maybe as a one-off, that like you're fine drawing at the end of the game. You notice, okay, next turn I deck out anyway. I need to win right now. Guess I discard a card and we see where it brings us. I can see that, but I don't really see doing it much beyond that. So I will be giving it a 6 in Standard for that reason. I will be giving it a 1 in Premium, because getting 15,000 in Premium is not a big deal. Balaral does that already. Managarmer does that already. I don't see this mattering all that much. However, this card has one thing in Premium going for it, and that is you have this Fox grade 2, no, this Deer grade 2, that when boosted by a 20,000 or higher thing, gains a critical. So if you are going to use that Deer together with this card on a Balaral turn, but even then, if you're doing it on a Balaral turn, you're able to just make the thing behind it big anyway. So there it doesn't even matter. But on any other turn than a Balaral turn, you can give that Deer an extra crit. And that's one of the few ways to reliably do it. Is it worth it? I don't feel like it is. So again, maybe, okay, I'll bump it up to like a 3 for that interaction. But beyond that, I don't see this really getting much use in Premium. But it's really, really cute. I think it'll definitely be more of a Standard card, if that even. Then we have the commons. So first of all, we have Elder Professor Marco Madar. This is just the 12k vanilla. Not much to be said. Then we have Damodile. We have Act on R once per turn if it's on an additional rear, so it has to be on Excel Circle, Counterblast 1. It gets 10,000. If you have 5 or more front row units, so you need to have loads of it, like you need to have 2 Excel Circles already, your opponent chooses one of her rears and retires it. I don't see this card really getting much play. Sure, you can counterblast 1 to make it bigger, but Geograph Giant already gets huge, Barcode Zebra already gets huge, and again, CB, Painful Resource, and having 5 or more fronts, cool, but then what are you really retiring? That's so important, your opponent gets to choose anyway. I don't see this card doing much. I think this is like a 2 out of 10. I personally probably wouldn't be running this. Then we have Art Member Père Noir. Now, act in drop zone, bind this card, and put up to 2 normal units from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck in any order. This stops you from decking out. But do you want a card that does absolutely nothing? In Standard, I think this can be like a 1 or a 2 off, but maybe actually a 1 off. It's basically like, whoa, the game has been going so long, I have this one final potential push, but I'm gonna deck out if I do it. Hey, I've gone through my entire deck anyway, I randomly milled this card at some point, I'm back in the game. I can see that card being pretty good for that, but I definitely don't value it that high. I think this is like a 5 in Standard, or maybe a 6. Now in Premium, it's a bit better, for the reason that in Premium, the normal units you would be sending back are normal units you can actually search. So when you milled a Leopard or a Rhino too many, or well, the grade 3 that you want to ride, that is painful. But you still want access to it because you want to be Zoaing or you want to be doing a big Balaral turn. So now what? Well, because you've been milling so much and you've been guarding your 5Ks away with Spangled, now this card will suddenly send those grade 3s back to deck. And then Mike Saburo can fetch them again. So while in Standard this is only to stop yourself from going deck out, in Premium this is recycling cards that you can then search back anyway and shuffle. So there, I think just because of that, it should already be placed higher. So I'm going to put it for Standard at a 5 out of 10, and in Premium a 7 out of 10, purely because of that interaction. Again, in both formats, I don't see this going higher than a 2 off. I can see this maybe being a 2 off in Premium or a 1 off, and in Standard I can see it being a 0 off or a 1 off. Still, the art is pretty nice. Like, it looks like a crayon tiger that's a bit discounted. Next up, Solution Tenrek. So during the battle is attacked, if your drop zone has 25 cards or more, that's a lot actually. This unit is on an additional rear. Your opponent cannot call grade 0 cards from hand to BG. So, in Standard, turning off grade 0s is a big deal, but this is a 13k. Do you really care about a 13k? Again, it's 13 only because it's on an Excel circle. You can make it bigger with the Hamden. I can definitely see this being very scary with a Hamden because then your opponent has to drop 2 cards because grade 0s are no longer an option. Again, you need 25 cards and drop those, so it's really the end of the line, let's say. Do I care? Somewhat. It definitely feels like the sandcastle that Shadow Paladin ran at one point, where like, oh, I run this once because at the end of the game I'll probably have drawn it and it could just matter, but it's still pretty iffy. I definitely think this is not the best tech slot in Standard, but I can see it being a tech slot at least, which I can't say for some other cards. Now in Premium, we already have Rhino doing this so much more reliably and quicker. Then I'm thinking, why would I ever run this over Rhino? And well, the why is, Rhino is an awful ride, and grade 3s are very strong in great nature. As we've seen before, we have the Leopard, Isabelle, Mary Martin, Hamsuke, Big Belly, Rhino, there are Culture Gorilla. There are all these cards that can actually do incredible things in great nature right now. We luckily have Mike Saburo to surge them as well. So maybe we could decrease the amount of Rhino rerun, because by the time we're doing a big Balaral turn, this guy will be a Rhino without being the awful ride that automatically loses you games. I've tested this a little and it didn't come up that often, so I definitely don't think it's like an amazing card, but it's an option, you know. If you're really afraid of having to ride the Rhino and you're relying on the big Balaral turns, which will really end your opponent when you're almost take out anyway, this can be a good tech over that Rhino. You could maybe run 2 Rhino, 1 of this, so you don't have the highest chance of misriding. So in Standard, I'll give this a 4. In Premium, I'll give this a 4 as well, because in Standard, you don't have any grade 0 restrict. So it's a different kind of card that maybe come up at one point. In Premium you already do, but then it's a fine alternative. So I'll give it a 4 in both formats. Then we have another Hamsuke card that is just good generic support. Auto 1V and R when placed, cost Soul Blast 1 and put a grade 2 or less card from your hand into your soul. Draw a card. Now you could think, oh, so we can put the grade 2 into soul if we missed it. And that's true, but it's again too late. Because if you missed the grade 2, you don't have it in hand on grade 2. So you will only be using this really on grade 3 when you already rode. So then you will get the grade 2 in soul by the time you ride for the second time. But is the extra Excel circle impactful at that point is the question. Now the only time that wouldn't be the case is if you drew your grade 2 after the fact with something like the other Hamsuke grade 2. It's a bit far-fetched. I do think, however, that being able to randomly cycle bad cards and draw new ones is very strong. So I could see this being in like a non-Hamsuke deck, again being really good filtering, just like the other Hamsuke card. So I'm definitely happy to see this card. I just don't think it's actively supporting Hamsuke as much as I would hope. I'll give this a 6 to 7, maybe a 6.5 out of 10 in standard, and in premium I don't think we need that filtering, so it'll be getting a 3. Something like that. I don't see this card being the best premium card ever. Maybe if you're looking for like heels digging, maybe it's more a 4 card, but it's definitely not as good in premium as it is in standard. Then we have Protractor Parrot. Auto on G when placed if you have 4 or more front row rear guards. We're in Murakumo format, that's very doubtful. Draw a card and discard a card. So this is like a very bad Spangled. Given we're in a format where Mura board wipes, Tachi will board wipe, I don't think this is all that good. Maybe once we're in a less control heavy format, well, it's not even control. These are like very aggro decks that just get free board wipes for no reason. I don't think this is the best card right now. I'll give this a 2. Same thing in premium. Like, why would I ever use this over Spangled? And do you even have like the front row rear guards after retiring them of Crayon and Belarl? Don't think so. I'll give this a 2 or a 1 in both. This is really not a card I'm looking for. Finally, we have the triggers. I don't think they matter that much. We can, however, look at the art. We have the new starter, Jet Ink Fox. It's relatively cute. I don't really like the orange pattern. I prefer Blackboard Parrot color-wise, even though I really wanted to replace it. I think Blackboard looks better than this. But again, that's just opinion. Then we have the critical trigger. I don't know. It's a bit scary to me. I was hoping for a new crit that's really cute. Like the pony we got in the premium collection was a really cute card. This is like, I don't know. I don't think I would cut Chameleon for this. However, what's really, really cute is the new front trigger. We have Correction Chinchilla. Look at him. Just look. Look at him with these little correction thingies and with the ears. This is a really cute card. So let's end it on a positive note right here. This has been the Mysterious Fortune set review for Great Nature specifically so far. Again, if you're still looking for Mysterious Fortune stuff, you're located in Europe, we have the pre-orders up on Claret Cards right now. You can use the code Black Friday to get a big discount. If you're watching this after the Black Friday weekend, you can also use the code Solemn for a slightly smaller discount, but still a discount nonetheless. If you're still looking for Black Friday deals, again, that's also some high rarity stuff on the side right here, and you can use the code Black Friday to get even higher discounts. So that's all cool and dandy. Thank you so much. Subscribe to this channel and I will see you soon. Ciao.